Good morning, good morning. We still have people coming in, so we'll be starting in probably about 2 minutes time. We'll let some people come in first before we get started. Okay, so let's get started. All right. Today's presentation is called The Role of Talent in the Digital Customer Journey. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any questions for us, we are saving time at the end, so please be sure to use the Q&A or chat windows to submit your questions and we'll bring them up at the end. So this presentation is being recorded and we will share it with you at the end of the session. So we have with us today, Phil Cook, our Marketing Cloud Director for Asia Pacific. So Phil has over 2 decades of experience working with global businesses, helping them leverage digital technology to grow revenue, reduce costs, and drive customer engagement. He is passionate about making organizations more customer and data-centric through embedding data-driven personalization, experimentation, and human-centered design. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Phil. Right, Phil, take it away.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks very much. And thanks everybody for joining in. Really appreciate you taking your time out of your days to join us here at Acquia to talk through the role of talent in the digital customer journey. I'm also aware I have a couple of my colleagues on the call, so welcome. Look, today I'm really excited by today because I think talent's a really fascinating area, and the intersection of people and technology is somewhere which I think it's a really exciting place to be at the moment. So look, yeah, it's great to see everybody online. As some of you will probably be aware, this is part of a webinar series. We've talked through, the 3 emerging trends that we've seen coming out of our recent CX survey across Asia Pacific. And last week we talked around, or last webinar we talked around how open source tech drives value to the business. Before that, when we introduced the series, we talked around, what are these 3 key factors, shaping CX across Asia Pacific and 2021 from the survey. Today we're talking around talent, and then there is a further webinar coming up on the 8th of April where we'll actually talk, take a deeper dive through subjects like personalization and how you can improve CX through delivering personalized automated solutions. So thank you very much. As Rachel said, if you have any questions, please do reach out either on the chat or you can reach out afterwards. Happy to take any questions and looking forward to good conversation today. So just before we go into the presentation around talent, just a little bit of background for those of you who perhaps weren't at the previous session. So we discussed this in our last webinar, but essentially Acquia did a global survey to gain some really good perspective and good data on these topics around customer experience and what's been happening. And through that, that enables us to really compare and contrast what's happening in Asia Pacific with what's happening in other areas globally. Just by way of numbers, the survey took into account around 8,000 consumers across 8 markets, so 1,000 consumers per market, and around 800 marketeers. So again, 100 marketeers per market. So that's the basis for the survey. Today we're talking about talent. So just as another recap, the 3 emerging trends that came through from the CX survey were in and around technology, the use of technology and how technology, the impact that technology has been making on customer experience. Talent, so I guess the role of people and specifically some of the data we'll talk about today is the issue of talent shortages in some of the key areas which are required to enable a fantastic customer experience, and also touch points. So just the changes actually in the touch points that customers and consumers are engaging with brands, and how you can actually use technology to improve the experience as that number of touch points grows. So I guess when we're talking about talent generally, the data from the survey and both of the surveys for Singapore and Australia are available for download on the Acquia website. But one of the major things that we observed straight away was that a quarter of Australian businesses noted that they needed to do more with less. As a result of COVID, they had pressure on workforce numbers. There was also obviously very much changing demand. So everything that the businesses are trying to achieve today has to be done in the context of disrupted operations and in many cases reduced workforce. In terms of talent shortages, generally we'll go into the details a little bit later on, but there are some pretty significant results. So one of them would be that over half of Singaporean businesses reported a shortage of digital customer service roles. So that means that obviously that will have an impact on the customer experience if you don't have those people in those positions to help those customers have a positive experience. That can have a dramatic impact. So we'll be discussing some of these impacts, and also we'll be discussing how you can combat the talent shortages and some of the challenges through a couple of ways. I guess one is a clearly identifiable and a fit for purpose CX strategy. So we'll talk through some of the fundamentals of what that means. Secondly, we're going to be talking through how you can work with agencies and partners and some of the things you should be thinking about when you look to work with agencies and partners to help close some of those talent gaps. And then finally, we'll be talking through how you can actually use technology itself to close talent gaps. So there are some good examples there. So if we're talking about customer journey. So what I thought I'd do is just start the conversation with a typical customer journey, so you can get a feel for people who haven't had a lot of exposure to customer journey mapping. This is just a generic customer journey. It's not a specific one for a customer, but what will happen is you typically have 3 stages of the customer journey. So you have a pre-purchase stage where the customers are considering options and doing research. Then you have a purchase stage where they're actually in the process of transacting with the company, creating that relationship, having a transactional relationship. And then you have a post-purchase stage, which is moving into service interactions and potentially new products, new services, and a deeper relationship. So this is an example of some of the stages in that journey. And for example, a customer might start with searching for a product on Google and then clicking through a campaign, looking at some personalization on the website or some profiling in terms of how to use the product or which product will be right for them. In some cases, they could request a sample online, or they could be looking at downloading an example of a PDF. They can also be having personalized assistance. So that's an interaction with obviously with a human. And for all these different touch points, some of them are digital touch points only. So things as we move through that customer journey, like receiving emails or visiting websites or using mobile devices through an app. Some of them are digital touch points and manual touch points, so they have a component of each. And I think to begin this conversation around talent, what I've observed is that many organizations don't actually have a particular solid understanding of their customer journeys and specifically for each touch point in that journey, whether it's a manual touch point, digital touch point, and so on. So we'll come back to customer journeys later on, but what I would say is that we do know that from COVID and from changing situations across Asia Pacific as a result of COVID, these journeys are changing. So some of the data from the survey shows that there's a massive increase actually in the usage of digital channels. So this data from Singapore says that 63% of Singaporeans are intending on, or have shifted the way that they're using their social media. So they're using social media more than they were previously. Similarly with video chat and mobile apps, and visiting websites more often, and other mobile apps such as productivity are going through the roof. So one of the areas that brands are struggling in is that as they start mapping their customer journeys, they actually realize that their consumers are potentially moving to different channels that they hadn't considered, or changing their ways of engaging with the brand faster than the brands can react. Now, one of the backgrounds for that, of course, is around social distancing, but this data from McKinsey is really interesting because it shows just the massive impact of COVID. So, the numbers of employees working remotely full time has just changed astronomically from 9 to 84% in certain sectors. So obviously, with people working remotely, they're not engaging necessarily in physical interactions. They're ordering different types of products and services, and this is constantly evolving. So obviously, every country is at a different stage of their journey with COVID. But what we do know is that things are continuing to evolve. So some of the trends, some of the usages of digital uplift and usage that consumers experience, they'll continue to do that, after they return back to work, or after they return back to to social interactions, once COVID is behind us. Things are constantly evolving, but marketing teams really now they have to deal with a lot of different types of interactions, different types of digital interactions, and really change the way they're thinking about designing and delivering these customer journeys. The next sort of headline from the survey I'll focus on is that a massive 87% of consumers in Singapore say their digital experience with brands has changed. So that means that their expectations are higher. They're expecting more out of that relationship, and because they can't go into store, because they can't have those service interactions in the way that they used to, they're more reliant on digital channels. And one thing that we do know from data is that consumers are prepared to spend a lot more for companies that deliver excellent customer service. So up to 17% more was a barometer that was put out recently by American Express. So with that kind of target, or that kind of potential reward, it's obviously critical to understand the customer journey, understand where there are digital and manual touch points, and to optimize all of those touch points. So look, what you need to really think about is, how will you be able to do that? Can you do that today? People in marketing, they talk about developing customer empathy at scale. Now, customer empathy means that you understand how your brand's actions are making the customer feel, and more importantly, understanding how your actions are likely to make the customer feel so in the future. And scaling, or having the ability to scale customer empathy, really means making every customer feel as though they are unique, and that you as a brand understand what's important to them and where they are on their customer journey with your brand. So for example, how happy were they with the last interaction? How are their preferences? And it's really difficult because most businesses lack the people, or the talent, or the platforms needed to bring all this data together and build that unified view. So the other thing really is to note here is that, and looking at kind of talent and technology, is they don't live, they're not one or the other. There are many, and should be most occasions, where technology is actually assisting your people to deliver a better customer experience. I've got an example of that later on, where I can sort of show some examples which may not be immediately obvious. But bringing all that together, making everything that you know about the customer available across multiple channels is actually pretty difficult. So from a customer's perspective, they have a poor experience. They know that you as a brand has a lot of data on them, but the experience is still not showing that you you can leverage that data, or you can provide the service, which is a really genuinely personalized experience to them. So examples of not respecting when customers have opted into certain mail lists because they continue to get messages when you call up to the care agent, and the care agent obviously has no idea about your loyalty, or even in social media where potentially you've purchased a product, and then that brand is continuing to show ads of that same product. So the reason for this is because data is in silos. So often there is there are different platforms that hold different types of customer data, either transactional data or digital interaction data, or analytics data, loyalty data, service data, for example. So without having a unified view, then you can see how that data silo can create a negative customer experience. Similarly, there's also silos within content. So there might be content which is used on the website that may be different from content which is used in direct mail or in catalogs, and without having a unified view across content, it's very difficult to deliver that consistent customer experience as well. And often with larger organizations or more complex organizations, they may have made a number of acquisitions over the years. They may have different organizational silos by territory or by function or by brand. And so they're actually not community across the organization. It's difficult to get that interaction across the organization as a whole, as it's now become. And I guess to layer on top of that, as we said earlier, the challenges are really only becoming more complex because new platforms are being launched virtually daily. Customers are behaving differently very, very quickly. And every service that's provided is actually creating a new silo of data. So for marketing teams and IT teams, keeping up with the all of these digital channels across web, mobile, social was hard enough to begin with, but it's actually just getting more and more complex. So what we saw in the survey was that there are significant talent issues, talent gaps. In Australia, for example, you can see there that across a number of digital disciplines or marketing disciplines, Australian businesses have larger talent gaps than their global counterparts. Something like 51% of Australian brands note that they have brand marketing leadership challenges in that space. Also things, of course, on the more technical side, like data analysts and data scientists are in short supply. So and as I said earlier, over a quarter of Australian businesses have been forced to do more with less because of the leaner workforces available as a result of COVID. In Singapore, the data is fairly similar. 54% of Singaporeans rely on their CMO to actually help them develop or help to develop the larger CX vision. But again, they're let down by shortages across a range of roles. As I said earlier, digital customer service roles is one of those, so that can create an impact on that customer experience. But also other roles like growth marketeers and data analysts are making it difficult to deliver the customer experience that they would really like to be able to. So we can see that there are shortages, and I guess the logical response to that from many organizations will be that they can partner with agencies or different types of resource providers, agencies or advisory partners, strategy partners, data partners to close some of these talent gaps. And what I'd like to do now is just talk through what that can look like and some of the things that potentially will help as you go through that journey. So working with agencies can be very, very beneficial. Obviously, agencies in certain cases bring specialist skills that don't exist in the organization. They can be brought in at relatively short notice. They can perform a specific task. They can actually help set up the entire transformation framework all the way through to specific tasks like a developer in a certain flavor of technology. So there's many and varied ways that you can work with an agency. But if I go back to the customer journey that we talked around earlier, what I wanted to talk through was sort of how talent gaps can really have a direct impact across this customer journey. So, for example, data scientists can develop a backlog of requests, of internal requests, so to build reports and provide insights to the business, and so that can really slow down business decision making. So decisions on pricing, for example, aren't as agile as it could be if you didn't have the reliance on and that backlog within that data scientists. Segmentation, insights, reporting, all of those things can be held up, and that can actually mean that you deliver a suboptimal customer journey because you don't have the insights and you don't have the data to know what that customer is needing at that point in time. As I mentioned earlier, digital customer service agents, they can become overwhelmed just with the sheer volume of calls coming in or digital interactions that they're required to respond to because customers are not available to complete their service interactions on the mobile app. So, one of the reasons could be that there's a shortage in mobile app developers. You can see that gaps in areas like machine learning engineers, that can make it really difficult for marketing teams to develop things like machine learning based segmentation models. So maybe their competitors are creating intelligent segments of the customer database and understanding more about their needs and wants and where they are in their buyer journey than they are because they have those teams in place. So agencies can help overcome these talent shortages by providing the really experienced specialist teams or individuals required for these key roles. And what I'd also like to say is while agencies can help, I guess, drive resource augmentation, so filling in roles where they don't exist in a brand, one of the key things that agencies can also really do is help provide brands with actually a very, very good customer experience strategy. So one of the things that a brand needs today to be competitive is a very clear CX vision, strategy, and roadmap. And among other things, because CX actually touches every part of the business, but if you're talking around CX and digital customer journey specifically, there are really three key components that a brand should be thinking about when they're working with their agencies to develop the CX strategy. So the first of these is a personalization strategy. An agency can help to identify valuable personalization use cases, and then they can work with the brand to build a prioritized personalization roadmap. Agencies, they bring a strength because they can provide a really different perspective. They can also, of course, bring experience from other customers or other clients that they have who are going through similar challenges. But they will also bring a new perspective and approach things that perhaps in a way that you hadn't thought about previously. So for example, the questions they may be asking around experiences: are you currently delivering the same digital experience to your customers and your prospects? So do you have a clearly identified experience strategy for people who are pre-purchase or compare with people who have already purchased and engage with you as a customer? Do you know who your VIP customers are? Who are the customers that are really, really valuable to your business and you need to be treating them in a different way, or you need to be ensuring that they're very, very satisfied, and what is the strategy to do that? For example, are you showing the same pricing or discounts to every customer? So regardless of their predictive lifetime value or how likely they are to buy, their propensity to buy. Do you know engagement preferences? Like, do you understand whether your customer responds better to email in the morning at work or potentially in the evening when they're watching TV, flicking through social media? So these are the kind of things which agencies can help deliver and improve. So personalization strategy is one of the core components of a solid CX strategy. The other piece around automation strategy is I'd like to talk through. So identifying customer journeys where automation could be applied to make the largest business impact, and then designing those solutions to automate that journey is really what automation strategy is. So agencies can jump in here and they can help brands document their key customer journeys across different channels at a really high level of detail. Then they can map the value and cost of the manual and the digital interactions to drive this automation roadmap. And I guess finally, it's all underpinned by what I would refer to as customer data strategy. So the customer data strategy will define the customer data model. So what is a data model which you're working towards? It will focus on how the brand should be collecting and processing that customer data to deliver two things. One is the most value to the brand, but of course, secondly, but not secondarily in importance, the best experience for the customer. So in this space, brands should be really working to understand how customer will be collected, how it will be shared, how it will be protected, things like what analytical capabilities are needed to deliver the CX vision. So think, how are you going to support the team to deliver the ideal customer journeys in areas like personalization, preferences, product recommendations, what customer data needs to be present, and which systems does it need to be made available to. I mean, as well, in terms of customer data strategy, businesses should be thinking about what insights and analytics would it be valuable to have at all times. So going back to that idea that potentially data scientists or analysts, they have typically a large backlog of requests coming in from all parts of the business. They're a resource which we know from the data is in short supply. So if there were solutions available, or if there were ways available to not require their input, and so that they could be working on other areas of the business, to deliver some of those, to enable the business to have some very, very powerful analytics and access to that data. Customer data strategy should also discuss how the brand will build a total customer 360 that consolidates and unifies those customer identities across a range of separate customer journeys. So a customer may not self-identify in a certain channel. They may transact in a different channel. They may be using a different name in a different interaction, or a different mobile number, or a different email address. So what can you be doing, and how can you be putting those identities together so you have that unified view of a customer, and you actually know that they are that single identity. So as we know, from the survey and from my personal experience, most or many organizations do not have the experience or expertise to develop these strategies and these capabilities. So partnering with an experienced agency, a partner, can help everyone understand the strategy and transform the business that much faster. So, as we've seen, specialist skills are in short supply. Brands can work with agency partners. What you'll see here is on the left-hand side, these are the areas where agencies can add a lot of value. Really work where brands are typically finding these talent gaps that create the CX challenges. So things like customer research and journey mapping. Of course, we mentioned data science and AI and ML. Digital product development, experience design, and also working with brands to develop business cases, or to look at the value engineering of the business value engineering of that customer journey. Brands typically have some skills in these areas, so they'll have data insights function, sales and marketing functions, communications, internal, external comms, and IT infrastructure potentially. But the areas that you see, I guess if you look at the comparison, the areas on the left, which agencies are kind of adding this additional value, are quite specialist skill sets, and it takes a reasonable run time to bring these capabilities up to speed. I think one of the key areas that agencies should be providing input is helping brands develop very, very valuable use cases. So things like looking at how they can develop use cases to improve their return on advertising spend, how they can increase digital revenue across those customer journeys, how they can improve or have a better understanding of customer lifetime value, and how they can actually get much stronger customer insights, to get a really accurate view of customers to improve their marketing. At Acquia we have worked with agencies and partners, and obviously with our customers directly, and with agencies to help them develop use cases. And we do have a number of proof points, but done properly, it can have a massive impact. Working with technology and working with process improvements to deliver the kind of uplifts that you see on the right there, whether it's from improvement to return on advertising spend, so some big increases there. Looking at things like email click-through rates through better personalization and better use of technology and customer data, improving retention rates, improving omni-channel shopper journeys, and just even things like with Lululemon, that we worked with them and had a massive increase of overall baseline revenue just through getting that better view of the customer across their customer journeys. And then finally, on the piece of advice, I guess, is around working with agencies. Is the agency, they really need to fully understand the brand's level of digital maturity, because different organizations have very different levels of maturity. So approaching this as a one-size-fits-all is never really going to work. Some brands, we're looking to start with some simple trigger campaigns from a customer event, for example, that they couldn't track before or they didn't have visibility of before. And others of them will be, more advanced in terms of their digital maturity, and they'll be further down this path, and they'll be looking to use things like predictive analytics to optimize all of their marketing activity, or potentially integrate, total 360 customer data into their call center apps. So their service agents can have rich customer data on hand, and next best offer, next best recommendations available. So there are different levels of maturity for different brands, and it's important that the agency and the partner work together to understand, what is the right level to engage. Which of these use cases will be the most valuable for that customer, but also which of them are the most likely to succeed. So I guess with every use case, it's a hypothesis. Some of them have more technical touch points than others. Some of them require more integration than others. So it's important to work through that combination of complexity and risk and value. So that's something which an experienced agency partner should be able to provide. The other component of this is, and not just around agencies and partners, but as I mentioned up front, really understanding how brands can close talent gaps with technology itself. So there's a few areas here. There's really three main things. So the first thing is when brands are looking at creating their technology roadmap, they need to create what I would call a talent-centered technology roadmap. So by understanding where your talent shortages are, creating these challenges across the UX, across the customer journey, you can look to invest in technology that reduces the need for these specialist, hard-to-find resources. So we know from the survey that Australian brands have invested heavily in marketing and CX technologies, but they do have these critical skills gaps across marketing and data-related roles. Some of the platforms that are specifically designed for customer engagement, so personalization, marketing automation, customer data platforms, CRMs, they really help to add capacity to close talent gaps. The second point here is just to improve technical capabilities with the right platform. So Australian brands highlighted urgent talent shortages in both data science and machine learning. But I mean, the reality is that engineering and machine learning talent shortages don't necessarily have to slow you down. There are things as well that, possibility around low-code platforms. It's an area where Australian investment falls, well behind global peers, and we know that low-code platforms make it so much easier to build, to have agility, deploy, and analyze campaigns without any sophisticated programming knowledge. And then the final piece really around how, what we see in terms of how technology can help close talent gaps is to adopt an open platform to power your customer data platform, and we know that a customer data platform can have a transformational impact on how brands interact with their customers. We've seen the results of some of the uplifts of some of those use cases that we talked through earlier. And a CDP really is the backbone of a strong personalized CX. It is interesting to note, you can download the survey, but Australian brands have actually implemented CDPs at a very healthy rate, well in line with their global peers. When these are some examples in terms of CDP. So some of the efficiency. So when we look at talent shortages and using technology to close the gaps in talent, we'll see things like, typically there'll be a fairly manual task for someone to perform these tasks on the left-hand side. So, for example, executing an email campaign could be 2 to 3 weeks setting that up, or executing an SMS campaign, maybe a week and a half to set that up. There are other things too, where you can see that without the right technology in place, for example, customer service, won't be able to see the details of the customer, or for example, maybe an internal CRM team, they won't be able to access the customer profile. So with the right platforms in place, these things are either accelerated dramatically, which of course, frees up that person's time to work on more valuable tasks, or in fact, it wasn't possible before and now it is possible. So hopefully this gives a feel for how how there's that relationship between platform technology and talent, and they need to work seamlessly together. But with the right technologies, you can actually free up some of the more scarce talent to focus on those priority tasks. Right here, I'll I guess what I'd like to sort of point out here is that CDPs do things which simply can't be done without the use of a CDP. Essentially, obviously, ingesting all the data from all of the customer touch points that we talked about earlier, I guess both online and offline and different channels. But then going through that process of data cleansing, enrichment, appending data from third-party sources if that's helpful. But things like calculating 400 metrics, and some of these metrics would be things like customer lifetime value, or trending categories, or looking at churn analysis, or understanding, as I said earlier, who are the VIP customers. So instead of having somebody having to go through and pull these reports and run this analysis, or sending out the data to a marketing service provider, it is available within a customer data platform. And I guess for those organizations who are looking to understand more around how AI and ML can assist, things like likelihood models and predictive lifetime value, these machine learning capabilities, which are also essential part of a CDP, can really help drive that engagement across the customer journey. I'd just like to take you through an example here, and I referred to it earlier, but this is an Acquia customer called Archelek, who are a Turkish company. They manufacture and retail whiteware and electronica. So they operate in 30 countries, and they're founded a long time ago now. It was 1955. But they're actually the Europe's 4th biggest white goods company in total sales. And I'm talking here, sort of looking at a specific channel, so looking at call center experiences, and we know that call center experiences are a key touch point, particularly when customers are calling up because they have a problem, or they need some help. So they're really important to ensuring customer satisfaction and retention. But one of the typical challenges is that call center agents don't have full access to customer data. So they don't, but without having this full picture, they're not necessarily able to personalize those conversations as well as they might. So with access to customer data from all of those digital touch points across the customer journey, and giving those agents a really total 360 profile, those agents are much better placed to tailor their call, to tailor their interactions, tailor their responses, and of course follow up each individual. The way this looks, I guess, from a physical point of view, is that through the integration with their call center application, you can see these different data points in yellow, which are inserted into the call scripts, and so and these come from a combination of different fields within the CDP. So previously the agents didn't have any view of much of this information. But and so they can of course respond a lot more accurately, and they can personalize their conversations. They can also ask them things around their product recommendations, or their and using the CDP data, they could actually see on screen as well, like which individuals had a high likelihood of converting on that call. The results have been very positive with Archelek. they've realized some really good results. So they set up a quick wins campaign. The conversion rates of that were huge, 24%. They had a much better understanding of their customer records. So originally they had a huge 250 million customer records. Once we'd gone through with the CDP, duplicating and cleansing those records, it got down to 60 million records. And as well, just by sending out a much more intelligent and personalized communications in their SMS channel, they received a six times improvement to their conversion rate. So these are just some examples of how technology can help to close some of those talent gaps, either through helping get a better understanding of the customer, to enable those personalizations, removing some of the heavy workload of some of the people who are really in those critical roles, that there are significant data shortages by having the right technologies in place to make that to remove that need. And I guess in summary, really bringing it all together, the three concrete things that you need to be thinking about is firstly, really fully understand your customer journey. So if you have internal capabilities to do that, and you can map out your customer journeys and understand the physical interactions and the digital interactions, and what data is being shared and where it's being stored and where it's being collected, that's great. If you don't have that available, if you can't do that and within your own organization, of course, partners can help. It's really important to identify where you're most exposed from a talent perspective, and then select the right partners. So if you're looking for a data partner because you're looking to develop a data strategy, then you start to work with a partner who's developed data strategies for similar organizations, ideally. If you're looking to develop the CX journey maps and a CX partner, and to really map where your CX is today, and set up a fantastic CX strategy, and set up a personalization strategy. You work with somebody who's working in the agency or partner who's working in that CX space. And similarly, just looking for areas where technology can reduce the reliance on that specialist resource, and help deliver that more seamless personal customer experience right across the customer journey. So just coming up to a close now, and again, thanks everybody for jumping in and joining the session. We are Acquia. I'll be very happy to talk to anybody or send up a conversation with Rachel around Marketing Cloud, or my colleagues in Drupal Cloud. I'm really excited by where Acquia is heading in Marketing Cloud. I think it's a fantastic time to be working in this space, and kind of, as I said right at the beginning, working at that intersection of people, talent, and technologies. It's a really exciting place. So thank you very much for joining our webinar today. I will pass it, if I could, back to Rachel for closing comments, and to see if we have any questions and feedback.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you so much, Phil, for your time. So this session is being recorded, and we will share it with you guys who have attended, and it will be posted on our website as well. So if you do have any questions, please post it on our chat, and we will wait for a few minutes for any questions. All right. So our next webinar will be held on the 8th of April. Be sure to look out for the invite as well. All these sessions that you see on the screen right now are all recorded, and you can watch them on demand. So let us know if you'd like to have these links too. Right. Okay. So, all right. So let's wrap up, and we'll see you guys in April. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Bye.